The Battle of Hattin, a turning point in the history of the Crusades. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, was one of the most significant military engagements in the history of the Crusades. This pivotal battle saw the forces of the Ayyubid Sultan Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, commonly known in the West as Saladin, decisively defeat the army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The outcome of the Battle of Hattin led to the near-total collapse of the Crusader states in the Levant and marked the beginning of the end for Christian dominion in the Holy Land. This article will explore the background, key events, and consequences of the Battle of Hattin, as well as its enduring legacy in the history of the Crusades. Background: the Crusader states and the rise of Saladin. The Crusader states in the Levant. The Crusader states, also known as the Latin East, were a collection of feudal territories established in the Levant by European Christians following the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099. These states included the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Edessa. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, the most powerful of these states, was established in 1099 after the capture of Jerusalem from the Fatimid Caliphate. The Crusader states were characterized by a complex interplay of feudal relationships, religious fervor, and constant military conflict with their Muslim neighbors. The Crusader states were not monolithic entities. They were often riven by internal disputes, rivalries, and power struggles. The nobility of the Latin East was composed of a mix of European settlers and local Christians, who often had conflicting interests. The military orders, such as the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller, played a significant role in the defense of the Crusader states, but their independence and wealth also made them a source of tension within the Latin East. The rise of Saladin. Saladin, the founder of the Ayyubid dynasty, emerged as a unifying figure in the Muslim world during the late 12th century. Born in Tikrit in 1137, Saladin began his career as a military officer under the Zengid ruler Nur ad-Din. After Nur ad-Din's death in 1174, Saladin consolidated power in Egypt and Syria, eventually establishing himself as the Sultan of Egypt and the leader of the Muslim forces in the Levant. Saladin's rise to power was marked by his ability to unite the disparate Muslim factions under the banner of jihad, holy war, against the Crusader states. His vision was to reclaim Jerusalem and other territories lost to the Crusaders, and he pursued this goal with a combination of military prowess, diplomatic skill, and religious zeal. By the early 1180s, Saladin had successfully united much of the Muslim world under his rule, creating a formidable opponent for the Crusader states. The road to Hattin, tensions and conflicts. The years leading up to the Battle of Hattin were marked by increasing tensions between the Crusader states and Saladin's forces. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, under the rule of King Baldwin IV, had managed to maintain a fragile peace with Saladin through a series of truces and diplomatic agreements. However, Baldwin's death in 1185 and the subsequent succession crisis weakened the kingdom, creating an opportunity for Saladin to press his advantage. Baldwin IV was succeeded by his nephew, Baldwin V, a child who ruled under the regency of Raymond III of Tripoli. Baldwin V's reign was short-lived, and his death in 1186 led to a power struggle between Guy of Lusignan, who was supported by the military orders and the more hawkish elements of the nobility, and Raymond III, who favored a more cautious approach to dealing with Saladin. Guy eventually emerged victorious, but the internal divisions within the Kingdom of Jerusalem left it vulnerable to Saladin's forces. In 1187, Saladin launched a full-scale invasion of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, seeking to exploit the kingdom's internal weaknesses and achieve his long-standing goal of reclaiming Jerusalem for Islam. The stage was set for a decisive confrontation between the forces of Saladin and the Crusader army. The Battle of Hattin, July 4, 1187. The Crusader army, composition and strategy. The Crusader army that marched to meet Saladin at Hattin was a diverse force composed of knights, foot soldiers, and mercenaries. The core of the army was made up of the feudal levies of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, supplemented by contingents from the military orders, particularly the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller. The army also included a significant number of Turco-Poles, light cavalry recruited from the local Christian population. The Crusader army was led by King Guy of Lusignan, who was supported by a number of prominent nobles, including Raymond III of Tripoli, Reynold of Chatillon, and Gerard de Riedfort, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. The army's strategy was to march from the Crusader stronghold of Sefuria, modern-day Tsipori, to the town of Tiberias, which was under siege by Saladin's forces. The Crusaders hoped to relieve Tiberias and engage Saladin's army in a pitched battle, where they believed their heavy cavalry would give them an advantage. However, the Crusader army was plagued by a number of strategic and logistical challenges. The march from Saphuria to Tiberias was through arid and waterless terrain, and the Crusaders were ill-prepared for the harsh conditions. The army's leadership was also divided, with Raymond III advocating for a more cautious approach and Guy of Lusignan favoring a more aggressive strategy. These divisions would prove to be a critical weakness in the coming battle. Saladin's army, composition and strategy. Saladin's army was a well-organized and highly motivated force, composed of troops from across the Muslim world. The core of the army was made up of professional soldiers, including the elite Mamluks, who were slave soldiers trained from a young age in the art of war. The army also included contingents of Kurdish and Turkish cavalry, as well as infantry and archers from Egypt and Syria. Saladin's strategy was to lure the Crusader army into a battle on his terms, where he could exploit the terrain and the Crusaders' logistical weaknesses. He positioned his forces around the springs of Hattin, cutting off the Crusaders' access to water and forcing them to march through the arid and inhospitable terrain. Saladin also used his light cavalry to harass the Crusaders, weakening them through constant skirmishes and preventing them from reaching the springs. Saladin's army was highly disciplined and well-coordinated, with a clear chain of command and a unified sense of purpose. Saladin himself was a skilled tactician and a charismatic leader, capable of inspiring his troops and maintaining their morale even in the face of adversity. His ability to unite the diverse elements of his army and coordinate their actions would prove to be a decisive factor in the Battle of Hattin. The march to Hattin. The Crusader army began its march from Saphuria on the morning of July 3, 1187. The march was fraught with difficulties from the outset. The terrain was rugged and waterless, and the Crusaders were soon suffering from thirst and exhaustion. Saladin's forces harassed the Crusaders throughout their march, using hit-and-run tactics to weaken and demoralize them. As the Crusaders approached the village of Hattin, they found themselves surrounded by Saladin's forces. The Crusaders attempted to make camp on the slopes of the Horns of Hattin, a pair of hills that offered some defensive advantage. However, they were unable to reach the springs of Hattin, and their situation grew increasingly desperate as the day wore on. The Battle of Hattin began in earnest on the morning of July 4, 1187. The Crusaders, exhausted and dehydrated, found themselves surrounded by Saladin's forces on the slopes of the Horns of Hattin. The battle was characterized by a series of intense and chaotic engagements. As the Crusaders attempted to break through Saladin's lines and reach the springs, the Crusader heavy cavalry, known for their devastating charges, made several attempts to break through the Muslim lines. However, Saladin's forces were well prepared for these charges, using their superior mobility and archery to weaken the Crusaders before they could close the distance. The Crusaders' charges were met with a hail of arrows, and their ranks were further disrupted by the difficult terrain. As the battle progressed, the Crusaders' situation grew increasingly dire. Their lack of water and the relentless harassment by Saladin's forces took a heavy toll on their morale and physical condition. The Crusaders' infantry, already weakened by thirst and exhaustion, began to falter, and the knights found themselves increasingly isolated and vulnerable. In a final, desperate attempt to turn the tide of the battle, the Crusaders launched a last charge towards Saladin's position. However, this charge was met with fierce resistance, and the Crusaders were unable to break through. The battle culminated in a chaotic and bloody melee, as the Crusaders were overwhelmed by Saladin's forces. The aftermath. The Battle of Hattin ended in a decisive victory for Saladin. The Crusader army was effectively annihilated, with the majority of its knights either killed or captured. Among the prisoners were King Guy of Lusignan, Raynald of Chatillon, and Gerard de Ridefort. Saladin's forces also captured the True Cross, a relic of immense religious significance to the Crusaders, which had been carried into battle by the Bishop of Acre. The aftermath of the battle was marked by a series of dramatic and consequential events. Saladin, true to his reputation for chivalry and magnanimity, treated the captured Crusader nobles with relative leniency. However, Raynald of Chatillon, who had a long history of antagonizing Saladin, was executed. King Guy and Gerard de Riedfort were held for ransom, and many of the captured knights were eventually released. The fall of the Crusader army at Hattin left the Kingdom of Jerusalem virtually defenseless. In the weeks and months that followed, Saladin's forces swept through the Crusader territories, capturing key cities and fortresses with little resistance. By October 1187, Saladin had captured Jerusalem, fulfilling his long-standing goal of reclaiming the holy city for Islam. Consequences of the Battle of Hattin. The collapse of the Crusader states. The Battle of Hattin marked the beginning of the end for the Crusader states in the Levant. With the destruction of the Crusader army, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was left without the means to defend itself against Saladin's forces. In the months following the battle, Saladin's forces captured a series of key cities and fortresses, including Acre, Jaffa, and Sidon. The fall of Jerusalem in October 1187 was a particularly devastating blow to the Crusader cause, as the city held immense religious and symbolic significance for Christians. The collapse of the Crusader states was not immediate, and some cities, such as Tyre, managed to hold out against Saladin's forces. However, the loss of Jerusalem and the surrounding territories marked a significant shift in the balance of power in the Levant. The Crusader states were reduced to a few isolated strongholds, and their ability to project power in the region was severely diminished. The Third Crusade. The fall of Jerusalem and the collapse of the Crusader states prompted a strong response from Europe. In 1189, Pope Gregory VIII called for a new crusade to reclaim the Holy Land, leading to the launch of the Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. The Third Crusade was led by some of the most prominent European monarchs of the time, including Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. The Third Crusade achieved some notable successes, including the recapture of Acre in 1191 and a series of victories by Richard the Lionheart against Saladin's forces. However, the Crusaders were ultimately unable to retake Jerusalem, and the crusade ended in a truce between Richard and Saladin in 1192. The truce allowed Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem, but the city remained under Muslim control. The legacy of the Battle of Hattin. The Battle of Hattin had a profound and lasting impact on the history of the Crusades and the broader conflict between Christianity and Islam in the medieval period. The battle demonstrated the effectiveness of Saladin's strategy and leadership, and it solidified his reputation as one of the greatest Muslim leaders of the medieval period. Saladin's victory at Hattin and the subsequent capture of Jerusalem were celebrated throughout the Muslim world, and they remain a source of pride and inspiration to this day. For the Crusaders, the Battle of Hattin was a catastrophic defeat that exposed the vulnerabilities of the Crusader states and highlighted the challenges of maintaining a Christian presence in the Levant. The battle also underscored the importance of unity and coordination in military campaigns, as the internal divisions within the Crusader army contributed to their defeat. The Battle of Hattin also had a significant impact on the cultural and religious memory of the Crusades. The loss of Jerusalem and the True Cross were deeply felt by Christians in Europe, and they contributed to the enduring mythos of the Crusades as a holy and noble endeavor. The battle also became a symbol of the clash between Christianity and Islam, and it continues to be remembered and commemorated in both Western and Islamic historiography. The Battle of Hattin was a turning point in the history of the Crusades, marking the beginning of the end for the Crusader states in the Levant and the rise of Saladin as a dominant figure in the Muslim world. The battle demonstrated the importance of strategy, leadership, and unity in military campaigns, and it had profound and lasting consequences for the balance of power in the medieval Middle East. The legacy of the Battle of Hattin continues to be felt today, as it remains a powerful symbol of the conflict between Christianity and Islam and a reminder of the complex and often tragic history of the Crusades. The battle's impact on the cultural and religious memory of both the Christian and Muslim worlds underscores its significance as a pivotal moment in the history of the medieval period. The Battle of Hattin, a comprehensive analysis of the Crusaders' strategic mistakes. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, was a pivotal moment in the history of the Crusades. It marked the beginning of the end for the Crusader states in the Levant and led to the eventual recapture of Jerusalem by the Muslim forces under the command of Saladin. The battle is often cited as a classic example of how strategic errors can lead to catastrophic defeat. This article will delve into the main strategic mistakes made by the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin, examining the decisions and actions that led to their downfall, background the Crusader states, and the rise of Saladin. Before delving into the specifics of the Battle of Hattin, it is essential to understand the broader context in which the battle took place. The Crusader states, established in the aftermath of the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, were a collection of feudal territories in the Levant, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Edessa. These states were perpetually vulnerable, surrounded by Muslim territories and reliant on a fragile network of alliances and military support from Europe. By the late 12th century, the Muslim world had begun to coalesce under the leadership of Saladin, Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, a Kurdish warrior who had risen to power in Egypt and Syria. Saladin was a skilled military leader and a unifying figure who sought to expel the Crusaders from the Holy Land. His rise to power posed a significant threat to the Crusader states, which were already weakened by internal divisions, political instability, and a lack of coherent leadership. The road to Hattin, prelude to the battle. The events leading up to the Battle of Hattin were marked by a series of strategic blunders on the part of the Crusaders. These mistakes set the stage for the disastrous confrontation that would follow. Failure to maintain strong alliances. One of the most significant strategic mistakes made by the Crusaders was their failure to maintain strong alliances, both within the Crusader states and with external powers. The Crusader states were often divided by internal rivalries and power struggles, which weakened their ability to present a united front against Saladin. For example, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the most powerful of the Crusader states, was plagued by factionalism. The death of King Baldwin IV in 1185 left the kingdom in the hands of his young nephew, Baldwin V, who was himself a sickly child. The regency was contested between Raymond III of Tripoli, who favored a more cautious approach to dealing with Saladin, and Guy of Lusignan, who was more aggressive and less experienced. This internal division undermined the Crusaders' ability to respond effectively to Saladin's growing threat. Moreover, the Crusaders failed to secure strong alliances with the Byzantine Empire and other Christian powers in Europe. The Byzantine Empire, which had once been a crucial ally of the Crusaders, had grown increasingly wary of their expansionist ambitions and was reluctant to provide military support. Similarly, the Crusaders' appeals for aid from Europe often went unanswered, leaving them isolated and vulnerable. Overextension of resources. Another critical mistake was the overextension of the Crusaders' military and economic resources. The Crusader states were relatively small and lacked the manpower and financial resources to sustain prolonged military campaigns. Despite this, the Crusaders often engaged in aggressive military actions that stretched their resources thin. For instance, in the years leading up to the Battle of Hattin, the Crusaders launched several ill-advised raids into Muslim territory, including an attack on a Muslim caravan in 1187. These raids provoked Saladin and provided him with a pretext for launching a full-scale invasion of the Crusader states. The Crusaders' inability to consolidate their gains and defend their territories effectively left them exposed to Saladin's counterattacks. Underestimation of Saladin's capabilities. The Crusaders consistently underestimated Saladin's military capabilities and strategic acumen. They failed to recognize the extent to which Saladin had unified the Muslim world and mobilized its resources for a concerted effort against the Crusader states. Saladin was a master of logistics and strategy, capable of coordinating large armies and sustaining them over long distances. He also understood the importance of psychological warfare, using propaganda and diplomacy to undermine the Crusaders' morale and sow discord among their ranks. The Crusaders, by contrast, were often overconfident and dismissive of Saladin's abilities, leading them to make rash decisions that played into his hands. Poor intelligence and reconnaissance. The Crusaders' lack of effective intelligence and reconnaissance was another significant factor in their defeat at Hattin. They failed to gather accurate information about Saladin's movements and intentions, leaving them unprepared for his advances. For example, in the weeks leading up to the Battle of Hattin, Saladin's forces were able to maneuver freely in the region, cutting off key supply routes and isolating the Crusader strongholds. The Crusaders, however, were unaware of the full extent of Saladin's movements and were caught off guard when he launched his attack. This lack of situational awareness severely hampered their ability to respond effectively. The Battle of Hattin, a catastrophic defeat. The Battle of Hattin itself was a culmination of the Crusaders' strategic mistakes. The battle took place near the town of Hattin, close to the Sea of Galilee, and resulted in a decisive victory for Saladin. The Crusader army, led by Guy of Lusignan, was virtually annihilated, and many of its leaders, including Guy himself, were captured. The decision to march to Tiberias. One of the most critical mistakes made by the Crusaders was the decision to march to Tiberias in response to Saladin's siege of the town. Tiberias was a strategically important location, but the Crusaders' decision to relieve it was fraught with risk. The Crusader army, which numbered around 20,000 men, including knights, infantry, and archers, was ill-prepared for the arduous march across the arid and waterless terrain of the Galilee region. The decision to march in the height of summer, when temperatures were at their peak, further exacerbated the difficulties faced by the Crusaders. Moreover, the Crusaders' route to Tiberias took them through territory controlled by Saladin, who had carefully planned his strategy to exploit their weaknesses. Saladin's forces harassed the Crusaders along their march, cutting off their access to water and wearing them down through constant skirmishes. Failure to secure water sources. The Crusaders' failure to secure adequate water sources was a fatal error that contributed significantly to their defeat. As they marched towards Tiberias, the Crusaders became increasingly desperate for water, with many soldiers suffering from dehydration and heat exhaustion. Saladin, recognizing the Crusaders' vulnerability, deliberately cut off their access to the Sea of Galilee and other nearby water sources. The Crusaders' attempts to reach the springs at Hattin were thwarted by Saladin's forces, who had taken up strong defensive positions on the surrounding hills. By the time the Crusaders reached the vicinity of Hattin, they were exhausted, thirsty, and demoralized. Their inability to secure water not only weakened their physical condition but also undermined their morale, making them more susceptible to Saladin's attacks. Tactical errors on the battlefield. The Crusaders' tactical errors on the battlefield further compounded their strategic mistakes. The Crusader army was divided into several contingents, each led by different commanders, which led to a lack of coordination and cohesion during the battle. The Crusaders' heavy cavalry, their most potent military asset, was unable to mount effective charges due to the difficult terrain and the constant harassment by Saladin's forces. The infantry, meanwhile, was left exposed and vulnerable, unable to form a cohesive defensive line. Saladin's forces, by contrast, were well coordinated and disciplined. They used their superior mobility and knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the Crusaders, surrounding them and cutting off any possibility of retreat. The Crusaders' inability to adapt to the changing dynamics of the battle left them trapped and at the mercy of Saladin's forces. The loss of the True Cross. One of the most symbolic and demoralizing moments of the Battle of Hattin was the loss of the True Cross, a relic believed to be a piece of the cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified. The True Cross was carried into battle by the Crusaders as a symbol of divine favor and protection. However, as the battle turned against the Crusaders, the relic was captured by Saladin's forces. The loss of the True Cross was a devastating blow to the Crusaders' morale, as it was seen as a sign of God's abandonment. This psychological blow further weakened the Crusaders' resolve and contributed to their eventual collapse. Aftermath. The fall of Jerusalem and the Third Crusade. The defeat at the Battle of Hattin had far-reaching consequences for the Crusader states. With the bulk of their military forces destroyed or captured, the Crusaders were unable to mount an effective defense against Saladin's subsequent advances. In the months following the battle, Saladin captured several key Crusader strongholds, including Acre, Jaffa, and, most significantly, Jerusalem itself. The fall of Jerusalem in October 1187 shocked the Christian world and led to calls for a new crusade to reclaim the Holy City. The Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192, led by Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire, was launched in response to the fall of Jerusalem. Although the Crusaders achieved some notable successes, including the recapture of Acre, they were ultimately unable to retake Jerusalem. The Third Crusade ended in a truce between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, leaving the Holy City in Muslim hands. Lessons from the Battle of Hattin. The Battle of Hattin serves as a stark reminder of the importance of sound strategy, effective leadership, and cohesive alliances in military campaigns. The Crusaders' defeat was the result of a series of strategic mistakes, including the failure to maintain strong alliances, the overextension of resources, the underestimation of Saladin's capabilities, and poor intelligence and reconnaissance. Moreover, the tactical errors made on the battlefield, such as the failure to secure water sources and the lack of coordination among the Crusader forces, further exacerbated their plight. The loss of the True Cross symbolized the Crusaders' spiritual and military collapse, marking a turning point in the history of the Crusades. The lessons of the Battle of Hattin are relevant not only to military historians but also to anyone interested in the dynamics of strategy and leadership. The Crusaders' mistakes at Hattin underscore the importance of adaptability, situational awareness, and the need to understand and respect one's adversary. In the end, the Battle of Hattin stands as a testament to the consequences of strategic failure and the enduring impact of leadership and decision-making in the face of adversity. Saladin's leadership style and its contribution to the Muslim victory at Hattin. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, stands as one of the most significant military engagements in the history of the Crusades. It was a decisive victory for the Muslim forces under the command of Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, commonly known in the West as Saladin. This battle not only marked the turning point in the struggle between the Muslim and Christian forces in the Holy Land but also led to the eventual recapture of Jerusalem by the Muslims. The victory at Hattin was not merely a result of superior numbers or luck, it was the culmination of Saladin's exceptional leadership, strategic acumen, and ability to unite a fractious Muslim world under a common cause. This article delves into the various aspects of Saladin's leadership style and how they contributed to the Muslim victory at Hattin. Background: the context of the Crusades and the rise of Saladin. To understand the significance of Saladin's leadership at Hattin, it is essential to contextualize the broader historical landscape of the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated by the Latin Church in the medieval period, primarily aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land from Muslim rule. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, resulted in the establishment of the Crusader states, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which became a thorn in the side of the Muslim world. Saladin emerged as a prominent figure in the Muslim world during the late 12th century. Born in 1137 in Tikrit, modern-day Iraq, Saladin rose through the ranks of the military and political hierarchy, eventually becoming the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. His rise to power was marked by his ability to consolidate various Muslim territories under his rule, creating a unified front against the Crusader states. Saladin's leadership was characterized by his strategic vision, military prowess, and a deep sense of religious duty, all of which played a crucial role in the Muslim victory at Hattin. Saladin's leadership style and overview. Saladin's leadership style was multifaceted, encompassing military strategy, political acumen, and a deep understanding of human psychology. His ability to inspire loyalty, his strategic foresight, and his adaptability in the face of changing circumstances were key elements of his leadership. Below, we explore these aspects in detail, examining how they contributed to the Muslim victory at Hattin. Unity and consolidation of Muslim forces. One of Saladin's most significant achievements was his ability to unite the fragmented Muslim world under a single banner. Prior to Saladin's rise, the Muslim territories in the Middle East were divided among various emirs and sultans, often at odds with one another. This disunity had weakened the Muslim response to the Crusader states, allowing the Christians to establish and maintain their foothold in the region. Saladin recognized that a unified Muslim front was essential to counter the Crusader threat. Through a combination of diplomacy, military conquest, and strategic marriages, Saladin succeeded in bringing together the Muslim territories of Egypt, Syria, and parts of Mesopotamia under his rule. This consolidation of power was crucial in providing the resources, manpower, and strategic depth needed to confront the Crusader states. At Hattin, Saladin's ability to command a united Muslim army was a decisive factor. The Muslim forces were composed of troops from various regions, including Kurds, Turks, Arabs, and Egyptians. Despite their diverse backgrounds, Saladin's leadership ensured that these forces fought cohesively, with a shared sense of purpose and loyalty to their commander. Strategic vision and planning. Saladin's strategic vision was another critical component of his leadership style. He understood that defeating the Crusader states required more than just battlefield victories, it necessitated a comprehensive strategy that encompassed diplomacy, intelligence, and logistics. In the years leading up to the Battle of Hattin, Saladin meticulously planned his campaign against the Crusader states. He recognized the importance of controlling key strategic locations, such as the city of Aleppo and the fortress of Kerak, which served as vital supply lines for the Crusaders. By securing these positions, Saladin was able to disrupt the Crusaders' ability to reinforce and resupply their forces, weakening their overall position. Saladin's strategic planning also extended to the battlefield itself. At Hattin, he employed a combination of tactics designed to exploit the weaknesses of the Crusader forces. He chose the battlefield carefully, positioning his troops on the high ground and using the terrain to his advantage. Saladin's forces were able to control the water sources, depriving the Crusaders of access to water in the scorching summer heat. This strategic foresight played a crucial role in the eventual Muslim victory. Adaptability and flexibility. One of the hallmarks of Saladin's leadership was his adaptability. He was not rigid in his approach. Instead, he was willing to adjust his strategies based on the evolving circumstances of the campaign. This flexibility was evident in the lead-up to the Battle of Hattin. When Saladin initially launched his campaign against the Crusader states, he faced several setbacks. The Crusaders, under the leadership of King Guy of Jerusalem, were able to muster a formidable force, and initial skirmishes did not go in Saladin's favor. However, Saladin was quick to adapt. He recognized that a direct confrontation with the Crusader army in open battle would be risky, given their superior heavy cavalry and disciplined infantry. Instead, Saladin adopted a strategy of attrition, aiming to wear down the Crusader forces through a series of smaller engagements and by cutting off their supply lines. This approach forced the Crusaders to march through arid and inhospitable terrain, exhausting their troops and depleting their resources. By the time the two armies met at Hattin, the Crusaders were already in a weakened state, making them more vulnerable to Saladin's tactics. Psychological warfare and morale. Saladin's leadership also extended to the psychological dimension of warfare. He understood the importance of morale and the psychological impact of his actions on both his own troops and the enemy. Saladin's ability to inspire his troops and demoralize the enemy was a key factor in the Muslim victory at Hattin. Saladin was known for his chivalry and magnanimity, even towards his enemies. This reputation earned him the respect of both his allies and adversaries. In the lead-up to Hattin, Saladin's treatment of captured Crusader soldiers and his willingness to negotiate with the enemy helped to create an image of a just and honorable leader. This, in turn, boosted the morale of his own troops, who were motivated to fight for a leader they respected and admired. On the other hand, Saladin's actions also had a demoralizing effect on the Crusader forces. His control of key strategic points, his successful raids on Crusader supply lines, and his ability to outmaneuver the Crusaders in the field created a sense of inevitability about the eventual Muslim victory. By the time the Crusaders reached Hattin, their morale was already low, and they were plagued by internal divisions and a lack of confidence in their leadership. Religious zeal and ideological motivation. Saladin's leadership was deeply rooted in his religious convictions. He saw himself as a defender of Islam and a warrior for the faith. This sense of religious duty was a powerful motivator for both Saladin and his troops, and it played a significant role in the Muslim victory at Hattin. Saladin's religious zeal was evident in his call for jihad, or holy war, against the Crusaders. He framed the conflict as a struggle to reclaim the Holy Land for Islam, and he used religious rhetoric to galvanize his troops. This ideological motivation was particularly effective in uniting the diverse Muslim forces under a common cause, transcending regional and ethnic differences. At Hattin, the Muslim troops fought with a sense of purpose and determination that was fueled by their religious convictions. They believed that they were fighting not just for territorial gain, but for the glory of Islam and the defense of their faith. This ideological motivation gave them an edge over the Crusader forces, who were often divided by internal rivalries and lacked the same sense of unity and purpose. Tactical brilliance on the battlefield. Saladin's tactical brilliance was on full display at the Battle of Hattin. He employed a combination of traditional and innovative tactics that exploited the weaknesses of the Crusader forces and maximized the strengths of his own army. One of Saladin's key tactical decisions was to position his troops on the high ground, giving them a strategic advantage over the Crusaders. From this vantage point, the Muslim forces were able to control the battlefield and dictate the terms of engagement. Saladin's use of the terrain was particularly effective in neutralizing the Crusaders' heavy cavalry, which was less effective on uneven and rocky ground. Saladin also made effective use of his light cavalry and archers, who were able to harass the Crusader forces from a distance. The Muslim archers, in particular, played a crucial role in weakening the Crusader ranks before the main engagement. Their constant barrage of arrows disrupted the Crusaders' formations and caused significant casualties. Another key aspect of Saladin's tactics was his ability to coordinate the movements of his troops. The Muslim forces were divided into several contingents, each with a specific role to play in the battle. Saladin's ability to communicate and coordinate these contingents allowed him to execute complex maneuvers and respond quickly to changing circumstances on the battlefield. Logistical mastery and resource management. Logistics played a crucial role in the outcome of the Battle of Hattin, and Saladin's mastery of this aspect of warfare was a key factor in the Muslim victory. Saladin understood that a successful campaign required not just military prowess, but also effective resource management and logistical planning. In the lead-up to Hattin, Saladin ensured that his forces were well supplied and that they had access to key resources, such as water and food. He established supply lines that allowed his troops to maintain their strength and readiness, even in the harsh conditions of the desert. This logistical planning was in stark contrast to the Crusaders, who were often plagued by shortages and logistical difficulties. At Hattin, Saladin's control of the water sources was particularly significant. The Crusaders, who were already exhausted and dehydrated from their march, were unable to access water, further weakening their ability to fight. Saladin's logistical mastery ensured that his troops remained in good condition, giving them a significant advantage over the Crusaders. Diplomatic skill and alliances. Saladin's leadership was not limited to the battlefield. He was also a skilled diplomat who understood the importance of alliances and negotiations. His ability to forge alliances with other Muslim leaders and to negotiate with his enemies was a key aspect of his leadership style. In the years leading up to Hattin, Saladin worked to build a coalition of Muslim states that could present a united front against the Crusaders. He negotiated treaties and alliances with various emirs and sultans, ensuring that they would support his campaign. This diplomatic effort was crucial in providing the manpower and resources needed to confront the Crusader states. Saladin's diplomatic skill was also evident in his dealings with the Crusaders themselves. He was willing to negotiate and make temporary truces when it suited his strategic goals. These truces allowed him to focus on consolidating his power and preparing for the eventual confrontation with the Crusaders. At the same time, Saladin's willingness to negotiate also helped to create an image of a reasonable and honorable leader, which further boosted his reputation and morale among his troops. Charismatic leadership and personal example. Saladin's personal charisma and his ability to lead by example were also important aspects of his leadership style. He was known for his humility, generosity, and willingness to share the hardships of his troops. This personal example inspired loyalty and devotion among his followers, who were willing to fight and die for their leader. At Hattin, Saladin's presence on the battlefield was a source of inspiration for his troops. He led from the front, sharing the dangers and hardships of the battle with his soldiers. This personal example helped to boost the morale of the Muslim forces and reinforced their sense of unity and purpose. Saladin's charisma also extended to his interactions with his enemies. His reputation for chivalry and magnanimity earned him the respect of the Crusaders, even in defeat. This respect was evident in the aftermath of the Battle of Hattin, where Saladin's treatment of the captured Crusader leaders, including King Guy of Jerusalem, was marked by a sense of honor and respect. Legacy and long-term impact. The Muslim victory at Hattin was not just a military triumph, it was also a testament to Saladin's leadership and his ability to unite the Muslim world under a common cause. The battle marked the beginning of the end for the Crusader states in the Holy Land, and it paved the way for the eventual recapture of Jerusalem by the Muslims. Saladin's leadership at Hattin had a lasting impact on the Muslim world. His ability to unite the diverse Muslim forces, his strategic vision, and his tactical brilliance set a standard for future Muslim leaders. Saladin's legacy as a defender of Islam and a unifier of the Muslim world continues to be celebrated to this day. The Battle of Hattin was a defining moment in the history of the Crusades, and it was a testament to Saladin's exceptional leadership. His ability to unite the Muslim world, his strategic vision, his adaptability, and his tactical brilliance were all key factors in the Muslim victory. Saladin's leadership style was characterized by a combination of military prowess, diplomatic skill, and a deep sense of religious duty, all of which contributed to his success on the battlefield. Saladin's victory at Hattin was not just a military triumph, it was also a reflection of his ability to inspire and lead his troops, to outmaneuver his enemies, and to create a sense of unity and purpose among the diverse Muslim forces. His legacy as a leader and a defender of Islam continues to be celebrated, and his leadership at Hattin remains a model for military and political leaders to this day. In the end, the Muslim victory at Hattin was not just the result of superior numbers or luck, it was the culmination of Saladin's exceptional leadership and his ability to bring together the diverse elements of the Muslim world under a common cause. It was a victory that changed the course of history and cemented Saladin's place as one of the greatest leaders of the medieval world. The long-term consequences of the Battle of Hattin for the Crusader states. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, was a pivotal moment in the history of the Crusader states in the Levant. This decisive confrontation between the forces of the Ayyubid Sultan Saladin and the Crusader army led by Guy of Lusignan resulted in a catastrophic defeat for the Crusaders. The aftermath of the battle had profound and far-reaching consequences for the Crusader states, reshaping the political, military, and social landscape of the region for decades to come. This article explores the long-term consequences of the Battle of Hattin, examining its impact on the Crusader states' territorial integrity, military strategies, religious dynamics, and the broader context of Christian-Muslim relations in the medieval period. The immediate aftermath of the Battle of Hattin. The fall of Jerusalem. The most immediate and dramatic consequence of the Battle of Hattin was the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin's forces on October 2, 1187. The loss of the Holy City was a devastating blow to the Crusader states, both symbolically and strategically. Jerusalem had been the spiritual and political center of the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, and its capture by Saladin marked the end of nearly a century of Christian control over the city. The fall of Jerusalem had significant repercussions for the Crusader states. It led to the collapse of the Kingdom of Jerusalem's central authority and the fragmentation of its territories. Many of the Crusader strongholds in the region, including Acre, Jaffa, and Sidon, either surrendered or were captured by Saladin's forces in the months following the battle. The loss of these key cities and fortresses weakened the Crusader states' ability to defend their remaining territories and maintain their presence in the Levant. The capture of Crusader leaders. The Battle of Hattin also resulted in the capture of several prominent Crusader leaders, including King Guy of Lusignan, Reynald of Chatillon, and Gerard de Ridefort, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. The capture of these leaders further destabilized the Crusader states, as it left them without effective leadership at a critical moment. Saladin's treatment of the captured Crusader leaders varied. While Guy of Lusignan was eventually released, Reynald of Chatillon was executed by Saladin, a decision that was both politically motivated and symbolic. Reynald had been a notorious figure in the region, known for his raids on Muslim caravans and his defiance of truces with Saladin. His execution sent a clear message to the Crusaders about the consequences of challenging Saladin's authority. The disintegration of the Crusader army. The Battle of Hattin resulted in the near-total destruction of the Crusader army. The loss of so many experienced knights and soldiers left the Crusader states severely weakened and vulnerable to further attacks by Saladin's forces. The disintegration of the Crusader army also had a demoralizing effect on the remaining Christian population in the region, many of whom fled or surrendered to Saladin's forces in the wake of the battle. Territorial consequences. The loss of key territories. In the months following the Battle of Hattin, Saladin's forces systematically captured many of the Crusader states' key territories. By the end of 1187, Saladin had taken control of most of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, including the cities of Acre, Jaffa, and Sidon. The county of Tripoli and the Principality of Antioch also suffered significant territorial losses. As Saladin's forces advanced into their territories, the loss of these territories had a profound impact on the Crusader states' ability to maintain their presence in the Levant. The Crusader states were now reduced to a few isolated strongholds, including Tyre, which was successfully defended by Conrad of Montferrat. The territorial losses also disrupted the Crusader states' economic and military infrastructure, making it difficult for them to regroup and mount an effective defense against Saladin's forces. The fragmentation of the Crusader states. The territorial losses suffered by the Crusader states in the wake of the Battle of Hattin led to the fragmentation of their political and military structures. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, which had been the most powerful of the Crusader states, was effectively dismantled, with its territories divided among Saladin's forces and local Muslim rulers. The county of Tripoli and the Principality of Antioch also faced internal divisions and power struggles, as their leaders struggled to maintain control over their remaining territories. The fragmentation of the Crusader states weakened their ability to coordinate their defenses and respond to Saladin's advances. It also created opportunities for internal rivalries and conflicts among the Crusader leaders, further undermining their ability to resist Saladin's forces. The impact on the Crusader states' economy. The territorial losses suffered by the Crusader states in the wake of the Battle of Hattin had a significant impact on their economy. The Crusader states had relied heavily on the revenues generated from their control of key trade routes, ports, and agricultural lands. The loss of these territories disrupted the Crusader states' economic infrastructure, leading to a decline in trade and agricultural production. The economic decline of the Crusader states had a ripple effect on their ability to maintain their military forces and defend their remaining territories. The loss of revenue made it difficult for the Crusader states to recruit and pay soldiers, purchase supplies, and maintain their fortifications. This economic weakness further exacerbated the Crusader states' vulnerability to Saladin's forces. Military consequences. The decline of the Crusader military. The Battle of Hattin marked a turning point in the military history of the Crusader states. The near-total destruction of the Crusader army at Hattin left the Crusader states severely weakened and unable to mount an effective defense against Saladin's forces. The loss of so many experienced knights and soldiers also had a long-term impact on the Crusader states' military capabilities, as it took years to rebuild their forces. The decline of the Crusader military was further exacerbated by the loss of key territories and economic resources. Without the revenues generated from their control of trade routes and agricultural lands, the Crusader states struggled to recruit and maintain a professional army. This military weakness made it difficult for the Crusader states to resist Saladin's advances and defend their remaining territories. The rise of Saladin's military power. In contrast to the decline of the Crusader military, the Battle of Hattin marked the rise of Saladin's military power in the region. Saladin's victory at Hattin demonstrated his ability to unite the Muslim forces and coordinate a successful military campaign against the Crusaders. The capture of Jerusalem and other key Crusader territories further enhanced Saladin's reputation as a powerful and effective leader. Saladin's military success also had a significant impact on the balance of power in the region. The Ayyubid Sultanate, under Saladin's leadership, emerged as the dominant power in the Levant, while the Crusader states were reduced to a few isolated strongholds. This shift in the balance of power had long-term consequences for the Crusader states, as they struggled to regain their lost territories and influence in the region. The impact on Crusader military strategy. The Battle of Hattin also had a significant impact on the Crusader states' military strategy. The catastrophic defeat at Hattin forced the Crusader leaders to reconsider their approach to warfare and defense. The traditional Crusader strategy of relying on heavily armored knights and static defenses had proven ineffective against Saladin's more mobile and flexible forces. In the years following the Battle of Hattin, the Crusader states began to adopt new military strategies and tactics. They placed greater emphasis on the use of fortifications, such as castles and city walls, to defend their remaining territories. They also began to rely more heavily on mercenaries and local forces, as the loss of their professional army made it difficult to maintain a standing force. The Crusader states also sought to form alliances with other Christian powers, such as the Byzantine Empire and the Kingdom of Sicily, to bolster their military capabilities. These alliances provided the Crusader states with additional resources and manpower, but they also introduced new complexities and challenges, as the Crusader leaders had to navigate the competing interests and priorities of their allies. Religious and cultural consequences. The impact on Christian-Muslim relations. The Battle of Hattin and the subsequent fall of Jerusalem had a profound impact on Christian-Muslim relations in the region. The capture of Jerusalem by Saladin was a significant event in the history of the Crusades, as it marked the end of nearly a century of Christian control over the Holy City. The loss of Jerusalem was a deeply symbolic and emotional blow to the Christian world, and it sparked a renewed sense of urgency and determination among European Christians to reclaim the Holy Land. The fall of Jerusalem also had a significant impact on the Muslim world. Saladin's victory at Hattin and the capture of Jerusalem were celebrated as a major triumph for Islam, and they enhanced Saladin's reputation as a defender of the faith. The recapture of Jerusalem also had a unifying effect on the Muslim world, as it brought together various Muslim factions under Saladin's leadership. The Battle of Hattin and the fall of Jerusalem also had long-term consequences for the religious dynamics of the region. The loss of Jerusalem and other key Christian territories led to a decline in the Christian population in the Levant, as many Christians fled or were displaced by Saladin's forces. This demographic shift had a lasting impact on the religious and cultural landscape of the region. As the Muslim population became increasingly dominant, the impact on the Crusader state's religious identity. The Battle of Hattin and the subsequent loss of Jerusalem also had a significant impact on the Crusader state's religious identity. The Crusader states had been established as Christian enclaves in the Muslim-majority Levant, and their existence was closely tied to the idea of defending and expanding Christendom in the Holy Land. The loss of Jerusalem and other key Christian territories undermined this religious mission and raised questions about the future of the Crusader states. The fall of Jerusalem also had a demoralizing effect on the Christian population in the Crusader states. Many Christians began to question the legitimacy and viability of the Crusader project, and some even converted to Islam or sought to negotiate with Saladin's forces. This crisis of faith further weakened the Crusader states' ability to maintain their presence in the region. The impact on the Crusader states' cultural identity. The Battle of Hattin and the subsequent territorial losses also had a significant impact on the Crusader states' cultural identity. The Crusader states had developed a unique cultural identity that blended European and Levantine influences, reflecting the diverse population of the region. The loss of key territories and the decline of the Christian population in the Levant led to erosion of this cultural identity. As the Crusader states became increasingly isolated and marginalized, the cultural impact of the Battle of Hattin was also felt in Europe, where the fall of Jerusalem sparked a renewed interest in the Crusades and the Holy Land. The loss of Jerusalem was seen as a major setback for Christendom, and it inspired a new wave of crusading fervor in Europe. This renewed interest in the Crusades led to the launch of the Third Crusade, which aimed to reclaim Jerusalem and restore Christian control over the Holy Land. The Third Crusade and its consequences. The launch of the Third Crusade. The fall of Jerusalem and the loss of key Crusader territories in the wake of the Battle of Hattin prompted a strong response from the Christian world. In 1189, Pope Gregory VIII issued a call for a new crusade to reclaim Jerusalem and restore Christian control over the Holy Land. This call was answered by several European monarchs, including Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. The Third Crusade, also known as the King's Crusade, was one of the most ambitious and well-organized crusades in history. It aimed to reverse the gains made by Saladin and restore the Crusader states to their former glory. The launch of the Third Crusade marked a significant turning point in the history of the Crusader states, as it brought new resources, manpower, and leadership to the region. The impact of the Third Crusade on the Crusader states. The Third Crusade had a significant impact on the Crusader states, both positive and negative. On the positive side, the arrival of the Crusader armies led by Richard the Lionheart and Philip II of France provided a much-needed boost to the Crusader states' military capabilities. The Crusader forces were able to recapture several key territories, including Acre, Jaffa, and Ascalon, and they successfully defended these territories against Saladin's forces. The Third Crusade also brought new leadership to the Crusader states. Richard the Lionheart emerged as a dominant figure in the region, and his military prowess and diplomatic skills helped to stabilize the Crusader states and strengthen their defenses. The Crusader states also benefited from the influx of European knights, soldiers, and resources, which helped to rebuild their military forces and fortifications. However, the Third Crusade also had some negative consequences for the Crusader states. The arrival of the Crusader armies led to tensions and conflicts among the Crusader leaders, as they competed for control and influence in the region. The Third Crusade also placed a heavy burden on the Crusader states' resources, as they had to support and supply the large Crusader armies. The legacy of the Third Crusade had a lasting impact on the Crusader states and the broader history of the Crusades. While the Crusader forces were unable to recapture Jerusalem, they were able to secure a truce with Saladin that allowed Christian pilgrims to visit the Holy City. This truce, known as the Treaty of Jaffa, marked the end of the Third Crusade and provided a temporary respite for the Crusader states. The Third Crusade also had a significant impact on the balance of power in the region. While Saladin remained the dominant power in the Levant, the Crusader states were able to regain some of their lost territories and strengthen their defenses. The Third Crusade also demonstrated the resilience and determination of the Crusader states, as they were able to recover from the catastrophic defeat at Hattin and continue their struggle for control of the Holy Land. The long-term decline of the Crusader states. The fragility of the Crusader states. Despite the successes of the Third Crusade, the Crusader states remained fragile and vulnerable to external threats. The loss of Jerusalem and other key territories had weakened the Crusader states' economic and military infrastructure, and they continued to face challenges from both Muslim forces and internal divisions. The Crusader states' fragility was further exacerbated by the death of Saladin in 1193. While Saladin's death initially created a power vacuum in the Muslim world, his successors were able to maintain the unity and strength of the Ayyubid Sultanate. The Crusader states, on the other hand, continued to face internal rivalries and power struggles, which undermined their ability to coordinate their defenses and respond to external threats. The loss of key territories in the 13th century. The 13th century saw further territorial losses for the Crusader states, as they struggled to maintain their presence in the Levant. The Crusader states' remaining territories were gradually eroded by a combination of military defeats, internal divisions, and economic decline. One of the most significant losses for the Crusader states in the 13th century was the fall of Acre in 1291. Acre had been the last major stronghold of the Crusader states, and its fall marked the end of the Crusader presence in the Levant. The loss of Acre was a devastating blow to the Crusader states, and it effectively ended their ability to maintain a foothold in the region. The impact of the Mongol invasions. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century also had a significant impact on the Crusader states. The Mongols, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, launched a series of invasions into the Middle East, which disrupted the balance of power in the region and created new challenges for the Crusader states. While the Mongols initially posed a threat to both the Crusader states and the Muslim powers in the region, they eventually formed alliances with some of the Crusader states against their common enemies. However, these alliances were short-lived and did little to reverse the decline of the Crusader states. The Mongol invasions further weakened the Crusader states' ability to defend their remaining territories and contributed to their eventual collapse. The legacy of the Battle of Hattin. The Battle of Hattin in historical memory. The Battle of Hattin has left a lasting legacy in the historical memory of both the Christian and Muslim worlds. For the Christian world, the Battle of Hattin is remembered as a catastrophic defeat and a turning point in the history of the Crusades. The loss of Jerusalem and other key territories was a major setback for Christendom, and it inspired a renewed sense of urgency and determination to reclaim the Holy Land. For the Muslim world, the Battle of Hattin is celebrated as a major victory and a defining moment in the history of Islam. Saladin's victory at Hattin and the subsequent capture of Jerusalem are seen as a triumph of Muslim unity and leadership, and they have been celebrated in Islamic literature, art, and culture for centuries. The impact on the Crusader states' historical narrative. The Battle of Hattin also had a significant impact on the historical narrative of the Crusader states. The catastrophic defeat at Hattin and the subsequent loss of Jerusalem marked the beginning of the end for the Crusader states, and it shaped the way their history has been remembered and interpreted. The Battle of Hattin is often seen as a turning point in the history of the Crusader states, marking the beginning of their decline and eventual collapse. The loss of Jerusalem and other key territories is seen as a major setback for the Crusader project, and it raised questions about the viability and legitimacy of the Crusader states' presence in the Levant. The Battle of Hattin in modern scholarship. The Battle of Hattin continues to be a subject of intense interest and debate. Historians have examined the battle from various perspectives, including military, political, religious, and cultural, In order to understand its significance and impact on the Crusader states and the broader history of the Crusades, the Battle of Hattin is often seen as a case study in the challenges and complexities of medieval warfare, as well as the broader dynamics of Christian-Muslim relations in the medieval period. The battle has also been the subject of numerous books, articles, and documentaries, which have sought to explore its historical significance and legacy. The Battle of Hattin was a pivotal moment in the history of the Crusader states, with profound and far-reaching consequences for their territorial integrity, military strategies, religious dynamics, and cultural identity. The catastrophic defeat at Hattin and the subsequent loss of Jerusalem marked the beginning of the end for the Crusader states, as they struggled to maintain their presence in the Levant in the face of external threats and internal divisions. The long-term consequences of the Battle of Hattin were felt for decades, as the Crusader states faced a series of challenges that ultimately led to their decline and collapse. The battle also had a significant impact on the broader history of the Crusades, shaping the way the Crusader states' history has been remembered and interpreted. Despite the eventual collapse of the Crusader states, the Battle of Hattin remains a defining moment in the history of the Crusades, and its legacy continues to be felt in the historical memory of both the Christian and Muslim worlds. The battle serves as a reminder of the complexities and challenges of medieval warfare, as well as the enduring significance of the Crusades in the history of the Middle East and Europe. The Battle of Hattin and its impact on Christian-Muslim relations in the Levant. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, was a pivotal moment in the history of the Crusades and the broader struggle for control of the Holy Land. This decisive confrontation between the forces of the Ayyubid Sultan Saladin, and the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem not only altered the political and military landscape of the region but also had profound and lasting effects on the relationship between Christian and Muslim leaders. The battle resulted in a catastrophic defeat for the Crusaders, leading to the fall of Jerusalem and the near collapse of the Crusader states. In the aftermath, the dynamics of power, diplomacy, and coexistence between Christian and Muslim rulers were irrevocably transformed. This article explores the multifaceted impact of the Battle of Hattin on Christian-Muslim relations in the Levant. It examines the immediate consequences of the battle, the shifting balance of power, the evolution of diplomatic interactions, and the long-term cultural and religious implications of this historic event. By analyzing the strategies, motivations, and actions of key figures such as Saladin, King Guy of Jerusalem, and other regional leaders, we can gain a deeper understanding of how Hattin reshaped the relationship between these two religious and political communities. The historical context of the Battle of Hattin. The Crusader states and the Islamic world before Hattin. To understand the significance of the Battle of Hattin, it is essential to examine the historical context in which it occurred. The Crusader states, established in the wake of the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, were a series of Christian principalities and kingdoms in the Levant, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Edessa. These states were founded on the premise of reclaiming and defending Christian holy sites, particularly Jerusalem, from Muslim control. The Islamic world, meanwhile, was fragmented and often divided along sectarian and political lines. The Sunni Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad held nominal authority, but real power was exercised by regional dynasties such as the Seljuk Turks, the Zengids, and the Fatimids of Egypt. The rise of Saladin in the late 12th century marked a significant shift, as he sought to unify the Muslim world under his leadership and challenge the Crusader presence in the Levant. The rise of Saladin and the Ayyubid dynasty. Saladin, a Kurdish military leader, emerged as a unifying figure in the Islamic world. After consolidating power in Egypt and Syria, he declared his intention to wage jihad against the Crusaders. His vision was not only to reclaim Jerusalem but also to establish a unified Muslim front against the Christian invaders. Saladin's rise to power coincided with a period of internal strife and political instability within the Crusader states, making them vulnerable to his ambitions. The road to Hattin. The events leading up to the Battle of Hattin were marked by a series of military confrontations, diplomatic maneuvers, and shifting alliances. In 1187, Saladin launched a campaign to weaken the Crusader states, culminating in the Siege of Tiberias. King Guy of Jerusalem, under pressure from his advisors and the military orders, decided to march his army to relieve the siege. This decision set the stage for the fateful encounter at Hattin. The Battle of Hattin. The military strategies of Saladin and the Crusaders. The Battle of Hattin was a masterclass in military strategy and tactics. Saladin's forces, numbering around 30,000, included a mix of cavalry, infantry, and archers. He employed a strategy of encirclement, cutting off the Crusaders' access to water and forcing them into a vulnerable position on the arid plains near the horns of Hattin. The Crusader army, led by King Guy, was composed of approximately 20,000 troops, including knights, infantry, and the military orders of the Templars and Hospitallers. Despite their numerical disadvantage, the Crusaders were confident in their heavy cavalry and the protection of the True Cross, a revered Christian relic carried into battle. The course of the battle. The battle began on the morning of July 4, 1187, with Saladin's forces launching a series of harassing attacks on the Crusader army. The Crusaders, suffering from thirst and exhaustion, were unable to maintain their formation and were gradually surrounded. By the afternoon, Saladin's troops had closed in, and the Crusader army was decimated. King Guy and many of his nobles were captured, and the True Cross was seized by Saladin's forces. The aftermath of the battle. The defeat at Hattin was a catastrophic blow to the Crusader states. The loss of their army left them defenseless, and Saladin quickly capitalized on his victory. In the months that followed, he captured key Crusader strongholds, including Acre, Jaffa, and, most significantly, Jerusalem. The fall of Jerusalem in October 1187 sent shockwaves throughout Christendom and marked the beginning of the end for the Crusader presence in the Levant. The immediate impact on Christian-Muslim relations. The fall of Jerusalem and its symbolic significance. The capture of Jerusalem by Saladin was a momentous event with profound religious and symbolic implications. For Muslims, it represented the restoration of one of Islam's holiest cities and a vindication of Saladin's leadership. For Christians, it was a devastating loss that underscored the fragility of their hold on the Holy Land. Saladin's treatment of the Christian population of Jerusalem, however, was notably lenient. Unlike the massacre that had accompanied the Crusaders' capture of the city in 1099, Saladin allowed most of the inhabitants to leave peacefully upon payment of a ransom. This act of mercy was widely praised and contrasted sharply with the brutality of the First Crusade. The reaction in Europe and the call for the Third Crusade. News of the fall of Jerusalem prompted a strong reaction in Europe. Pope Gregory VIII issued a call for a new crusade, and prominent European rulers, including Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire, pledged to take part. The Third Crusade, 1189–1192, was launched with the goal of reclaiming Jerusalem and reversing Saladin's gains. The shifting balance of power in the Levant. The Battle of Hattin and its aftermath fundamentally altered the balance of power in the Levant. The Crusader states, once a dominant force in the region, were reduced to a few coastal enclaves. Saladin's Ayyubid dynasty emerged as the preeminent power, controlling a vast territory that stretched from Egypt to Syria. The evolution of diplomatic relations. The role of diplomacy in the aftermath of Hattin. In the wake of Hattin, diplomacy became an essential tool for both Christian and Muslim leaders. The Crusaders, weakened and isolated, sought to negotiate alliances and secure support from European powers. Saladin, meanwhile, used diplomacy to consolidate his gains and manage relations with his Muslim rivals. The Treaty of Ramla, 1192, the Third Crusade, despite its initial successes, ultimately failed to recapture Jerusalem. The conflict culminated in the Treaty of Ramla, signed in 1192 between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin. The treaty established a truce that allowed Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem while recognizing Muslim control of the city. This agreement marked a significant shift in Christian-Muslim relations, as it acknowledged the need for coexistence and compromise. The legacy of Saladin's diplomacy. Saladin's diplomatic approach, characterized by pragmatism and a willingness to negotiate, set a precedent for future interactions between Christian and Muslim leaders. His reputation as a chivalrous and magnanimous ruler earned him respect even among his adversaries and influenced the conduct of subsequent Muslim leaders. The long-term cultural and religious implications. The impact on Christian and Muslim identity. The Battle of Hattin and the fall of Jerusalem had a profound impact on the religious and cultural identities of both Christians and Muslims. For Christians, the loss of Jerusalem reinforced the idea of the Crusades as a sacred struggle and fueled a sense of religious duty to reclaim the Holy Land. For Muslims, Saladin's victory became a symbol of Islamic unity and resistance against foreign invasion. The role of Hattin in Christian and Muslim historiography. The Battle of Hattin occupies a central place in both Christian and Muslim historical narratives. In Christian chronicles, it is often depicted as a tragic defeat and a cautionary tale of divine punishment for moral failings. In Muslim accounts, it is celebrated as a triumph of faith and a testament to Saladin's leadership. The influence on later Crusades and Muslim counter-Crusades. The legacy of Hattin influenced the trajectory of later Crusades and Muslim counter-Crusades. The Third Crusade, while unsuccessful in its primary objective, demonstrated the enduring appeal of the crusading ideal. Subsequent Crusades, such as the Fourth Crusade, 1202–1204, and the Crusade of Louis IX, 1248–1254, were shaped by the lessons of Hattin and the evolving dynamics of Christian-Muslim relations. The enduring legacy of the Battle of Hattin. The Battle of Hattin in modern memory. The Battle of Hattin continues to resonate in modern memory, serving as a symbol of historical conflict and religious rivalry. It has been invoked in contemporary political and cultural discourses, particularly in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the broader struggle for control of the Holy Land. The lessons of Hattin for Christian-Muslim relations. The Battle of Hattin offers valuable lessons for understanding the complexities of Christian-Muslim relations. It highlights the importance of leadership, diplomacy, and the need for mutual respect and coexistence. The legacy of Hattin reminds us of the enduring impact of historical events on the present and the potential for dialogue and reconciliation in the face of conflict. Conclusion. The Battle of Hattin was a turning point in the history of the Crusades and the relationship between Christian and Muslim leaders in the Levant. Its immediate consequences were devastating for the Crusader states, but its long-term impact was more nuanced, shaping the course of diplomacy, cultural identity, and religious memory. By examining the legacy of Hattin, we gain a deeper understanding of the enduring interplay between history, religion, and politics in the region.